Good afternoon, everyone. The April 25th, 2019 Veterans Land Board meeting will now come to order. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from our last meeting on January 24, 2019. After the board has had a chance to review and assuming no questions, comments, could entertain a motion to confirm the minutes for the record.
And I've reviewed those minutes, and I will make a motion to confirm.
I'll second. Motion is made, seconded, and carries unanimously to approve the minutes. Next item on the agenda is number 2, consideration for the nomination of Mark Havens as Executive Secretary of the Veterans Land Board for the state of Texas. Pursuant to Section 161 Tech 013 of the Texas Natural Code, I wanted to, as chairman of the board, nominate Mark Havens to serve as Executive Secretary to the VLB, and I would request that the board formally approve this nomination.
So you made a motion, and I will second it.
Motion is made, seconded, and carries unanimously to nominate and confirm Mark Havens as Executive Secretary for the Veterans Land Board for the state of Texas. Next item on the agenda is number 3, consideration possible action on VLB authorizing redemption of Veterans Housing Assistance Program, series of bonds and other matters in connection therewith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, congratulations, Mark, and congratulations to you, Andrew, and thank you very much for your service. I've really enjoyed working with you over the past few years, and I really appreciate your input into all that we've deliberated on over that time. This agenda item would constitute your approval of the redemption of Veterans Housing Assistance Program Fund 2 Series 2009 A-B. For the record, Rusty Martin, Chief Investment Officer.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
And 2010 A bonds. As you will recall, in the early years of the U.S. recession, which was a deep recession that began in 2008, the large U.S. domestic financial institutions temporarily ceased entering into new liquidity facilities related to floating rate bond issues. That lack of availability of liquidity facilities caused the board to temporarily issue traditional fixed rate bonds in the Veterans Housing Assistance Program instead of its usual synthetically fixed floating rate bonds. And it resulted in 3 fixed rate bond issues that were issued between 2009 and 2010. Each of those transactions was structured with a large bullet maturity that was callable at par after approximately 15 years. There's a table in the menu in your memo that shows the total amounts that are now callable and the applicable call dates. The 3 issues, total amount is $114,150,000. They are callable at a redemption price of par. You'll notice the interest rates on those series are quite high. 2009A, 5.25%, 5% each on the 9Bs and the 2010As. So now that those bonds are callable, staff has evaluated the possibility of issuing taxable refunding bonds to take advantage of the savings available from refunding those callable bonds with currently lower costing taxable debt. There is no economic advantage to us from trying to refund them with tax exempt debt because these are private activity bonds and federal tax law limits the yield on loans and investments for proceeds that originated from tax-exempt bonds. So there would be no advantage to using tax-exempt bonds to affect the refunding. In addition to evaluating the taxable refunding transaction, we also evaluated the possibility of using existing cash and investments related to some pre-2008 tax-exempt bond issues to affect the proposed redemptions. Only a very small portion of the borrowers in the VHAP meet the requirements necessary to borrow from those pre-2008 tax-exempt bond issues because they had to have entered the service before 1976 and applied for a loan within 30 years of their discharge date. So we're not able to recycle amounts received on those loans in the form of prepayments or allowable loan spread into new loans. And the amount that has accumulated in there in those various bond issues is more than enough to execute the proposed redemption without the need to issue any refunding bonds. On page 2 of your memo, I have a table that is a summary of the net present value savings that's associated with each of the potential mechanisms that we evaluated. The first one on the left, the net present value savings that we think would be available from issuing taxable refunding bonds is about $10.9 million. As a percent of redeemed par, that equates to about a 9.6%. As a rule of thumb, any refunding transaction that is 3% or higher is typically considered a very good transaction. So that is a very good transaction. But if you look at the part of the table next to it, you'll see if we use existing cash and investments that I discussed, the savings actually goes up to a little over $17 million on a net present value basis, which is about a 15% as savings as a percent of the redeemed par amount. So staff is recommending that you grant approval for the redemption of $114,150,000 of the Veterans Housing Assistance Program bonds, Fund 2, Series 2009A, B, and 2010A, in one or more tranches using the existing cash and investments currently in the Veterans Housing Assistance Program. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board at this time?
It's a great transaction.
Sounds like it.
I'll go ahead and move to confirm the staff recommendation.
And I'll second.
Motion is made, seconded, and carries unanimously to approve item number 3. Next item on the agenda is number 4.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. Approval of this item would constitute your approval of the sale of up to $2 billion of loans in the Veterans Land and Housing Assistance Program in one or more sales. As a reminder, in June of 2002, the board implemented a funding mechanism that pools loans originated to certain veterans in the Housing Assistance Program into Ginnie Mae pass-through certificates, and then subsequently sells them in the secondary market. Then the proceeds from those sales are used to originate new loans, and the process is repeated. Since the inception of that funding mechanism through March of this year, there have been 79 Ginnie Mae mortgage-backed security sales that we've effected, totaling approximately $3.2 billion at an average price of approximately 99%. In addition, the board also executed one whole loan sale of approximately $369 million in the housing program at a purchase price of $101. And we did 2 whole loan sales totaling approximately $96 million in the land program, with a weighted average price there of approximately 102.6. Since November of 2003, the board has delegated to staff the authority to sell up to $4 billion in housing and land loans in one or more sales. And the delegation of this authority allows us to eliminate the need to obtain board approval before each transaction, thus giving us flexibility to enter market on a timely basis. We're now approximately $295 million away from that $4 billion mark. Therefore, we're seeking authority from the board to sell up to an additional $2 billion of loans in one or more sales to include either housing or land loans. With regard to the housing program, given current and expected future loan demand, we're expecting that we'll sell approximately $1.3 billion of housing loans over the next 3 years. As has been the case in the past, our administrator, which is Gateway, will continue to convert those existing housing loans into Ginnie Mae certificates, and will also continue to act as our bidding agent for the sale of Ginnie Mae's at no charge. They offer those certificates to a group of investors that are all active participants in the Ginnie Mae secondary market. Therefore, we expect to continue to receive very attractive bids. And in addition, loans that do not qualify for Ginnie Mae pooling may be sold in one or more privately negotiated whole loan sales. With regard to the land loans over the past 3 years, we've worked hard with Next Bank to develop a single investor market for land mortgages originated in the land program, and so far that's resulted in about $100 million in land loan sales. We expect that we'll sell about $200 million of land loans over the next 3 years, again through a series of privately negotiated whole loan sales. And then before the $6 billion mark is reached, shortly before that, we will once again seek similar authority from the board. Therefore, I'm recommending you grant approval for the sale of up to $2 billion of loans in the Veterans Land Program and the Veterans Housing Assistance Program in one or more sales. And I further recommend that you set a minimum overall weighted average purchase price for each sale at 90% of par. Happy to answer any questions. This is a routine transaction that we have been, as I said, engaging in since 2003.
Yeah, I have a question, Rusty. So from 2003 until now, 2019, it took that long to sell or for $4 billion to occur, right? And then
Correct.
we're estimating that $2 billion will occur within the next 3 years?
That's correct.
Is that just because the tempo is so much faster nowadays?
Because the loan demand, yeah, the production volume is so much higher now than it was back then.
All right.
And in terms of the cap that's, that was originally set at $4 billion, is that established by VA code, or is that our
No.
internal
That was,
restriction?
that was a result of several incremental individual approvals by the board. So the board sets the cap.
Okay.
And the $2 billion, you know, it's a guess based on a couple of things. First of all, we didn't have any mechanism to sell land loans back then. That's a very recent development. So that adds volume to it that was not expected in the past. And in the past, also, the prospects for a whole loan sale were very slim. It was mostly the Ginnie Mae product that was the production was based on. But now we've enticed some buyers that look at those whole loans, and typically the reason they haven't been much of a factor in the past is because the coupon, those are mostly tax-exempt loans originating from tax-exempt bond proceeds, so the coupons are very low. I mean, they're well below market, but over time, as market rates have moved down, those coupons, even though they were low when we made them, they're now very attractive. And so that's what's generating that demand. We could be wrong. We may not have another large whole loan sale, although we are working on one right now that's about $400 million. So it just gives us the flexibility to take advantage of the market if the conditions are right for us to sell those and realize attractive pricing on them.
All right. I don't have any more questions.
Neither do I. I will move to confirm the recommendation from the board,
And
or
I'll
from the
second.
staff.
I'll second it.
Motion is made, seconded, and carries unanimously to approve item number 4. Next item on the agenda is number 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. So this is an item where we consider interest rates in the housing program primarily, and typically I have this on the agenda as a discussion item, but I am actually going to ask for some action today. And I just point out that during fiscal year 2018, we effectively returned to normal historical demand in the program, even slightly higher. And as you know, we define normal as $500 to $600 million per year in production. I would point out in the first 7 months of fiscal year 2019, we are already at about $530 million in new loans, well above our normal range. And at current demand levels, we expect to end the year at about $750 million. That's fine for 1 year. We can't sustain that kind of demand for long periods of time. We're running significantly above normal, both in terms of the total dollar amount and the number of loans. Our current weekly reset process revolves around setting a base rate for the program that is 25 to 65 basis points below our benchmark. And then our eligible disabled borrowers are allowed a 50 basis point reduction to that base rate. We've been setting that base rate at the 25 basis point mark below the benchmark for about 4 months now, but it has not yet produced a significant decrease in our overall loan demand. So what I'm requesting that you do is change that range from 25 to 65 basis points and lower it down to 0 to 65 basis points so that I can have more flexibility in reducing that spread so that we can more effectively control that demand. And that's what I'm asking you to do is reduce the range that we set the rate below the benchmark, reduce it from 25 to 65 basis points to 0 to 65 basis points. And then we'll continue to report back at every board meeting on the demand and what effects that may have had.
I mean, that would ultimately make us no different than anybody else who's out there providing loans, right?
Oh, right. We'll still be very competitive. We're just offering a product now that it's hard to identify what all of the reasons may be, but certainly, we replaced City Mortgage with Gateway. And it appears, at least anecdotally, that Gateway has a slightly more aggressive approach to originating loans in this program than City may have had. So that is a catalyst for a higher demand. And the rates that we're setting are just enough below market that it just heightens that catalyst. So if I can set the rate a little bit higher, squeeze that spread, then that allows us to control that demand. So it's just a matter, we won't be ultimately altering the demand, we'll be shaping it into a longer period instead of a more compressed period. The demand will still be there. It'll just be stretched out so that we can match the resources we have available on an annual basis with the loan demand.
Rusty, I think in the brief, you'd mentioned that total for disabilities or loans issued to vets with disabilities is projected to be $461 million, which is, I think it's important for the record to state that we're still offering that disability discount, if you will, to the rate, particularly to a group that represents a large percentage of the loans that are being issued to.
Absolutely. For all practical purposes, the program is primarily a program that funds loans to disabled veterans. A very high percentage of those loans, 85% of those loans are to disabled veterans. And they continue to get a 50 basis point discount below the base rate, which is already below market.
And that wouldn't change?
It would not change. It just wouldn't be as much below market.
So is there a sunset on this? Or is this something that if we authorized, it would be in perpetuity?
I expected it would be in perpetuity because it's a tool that has always been in existence since we started the rate setting mechanism back in, I think, 02, 01, 02, is quite a while ago. So we've always had a spread that we've worked at, and we've changed it as time went by. The bottom number 25 used to be 35, and then it was ratcheted down to 30, and then 25. So it's just
just in the last few years, right?
I don't remember when the last time we did. I think yes.
It was during my term on this board.
Yes, we lowered it to 25 during your term. Yes, that is correct. That's correct. So, I see it as being just a perpetual tool. Obviously you have to have faith in my ability to pick a rate that keeps demand where it needs to be. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that is our goal. And we will be reporting to you we report at every meeting on loan demand, so you'll know where the demand is. The board will know where demand is. And I don't anticipate this week going to 0. It's been at 25. I anticipate this week I'll move it to 20, and then we'll see what kind of impact that has on the rate lock pipeline. So it does take a while for those kind of changes to flow through the market. It takes a while for they show up in the rate lock pipeline, and then it takes a while before they actually show up in the production, in the actual purchases too.
So my 2 cents on this, Rusty, is that, and particularly given that this is my last meeting, this is one of those issues that, I'd want to sit down and kind of talk with you a little bit more about and just see kind of where it goes. And so, my outlook would have been, let's not grant authority to go to zero, but some lesser amount, and then just continually kind of incrementalize the way that we go about it. I mean, is that,
Well, if that's the prerogative, that's prerogative
mean,
of the
that's-
board, that's
no, I
fine.
understand that, but
Yeah.
how would such an approach, I mean, would that be detrimental to your ability to decrease demand if it were incrementally phased in versus saying, let's go straight to zero right away?
No, it just means that if going down to whatever the next increment is that you agree to doesn't work, it just means that I have to come back and ask you to lower it again. That's all.
I mean, that'd be my preference, is to set an increment where, right now we approve going down to 15 or, someplace like that, and then
I'm
at the next
I'm
meeting.
fine with trying 15 and see how that works.
That was the number I was thinking.
Okay.
Great minds think alike.
That works fine.
If council will approve proposed language of a reduction to 15%, or 15 basis points below the base rate, then we can move accordingly.
15 to 65 rather than the...
Correct, 15 to
Yes,
65.
Yeah, approved.
So moved.
Okay, I'll second.
Motion is made, seconded, and carries unanimously to approve item number 5. Next item on the agenda is number 6.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. Approval of this item centers around resident room rates in the David A. Gloyer Texas State Veterans Home Program. The first page of your memo has a chart that shows the changes that we've made to the resident room rates in the homes for the period 2006 through 2018. As you can see, since 2012, the board has generally been successful in holding resident room rates constant, and even in 2016, you actually reduced room rates by an average of 1.64%. The ability to keep those room rates unchanged during this period is due to several things, primarily sustained high occupancy levels. These homes generally result with or realize an average of 95% occupancy or even higher than that. Also, successful cost containment and robust per diem amounts from the VA for veteran residents with 70% or higher service-connected disabilities. All of those contribute to healthy programmatic cash flow. However, if you'll recall, last year in 2018, we necessarily had to increase the overall average room rate by 1.93% in response to increased operational expenses and a reduction in the surplus fund balance that is related to the construction cost of the new Houston home. This increase has achieved the desired effect upon program revenues and the surplus balance, so staff is not recommending an increase in room rates in the homes for the period June 2019 through May 2020. No increase. However, the Houston home is going to be opening very soon, so it's time for the board to set the initial resident room rates for that home. I've attached a schedule. It should be in there with your memo. It sets forth the proposed initial resident room rates for the Houston vet home, and the second page also depicts the current rates in the remaining vet homes that will remain unchanged. As you can see from looking at the spreadsheet related to the Houston home, the proposed room rates for that home range approximately 5.5% to 6% higher than those of the Tyler home, and that's purely a result of higher operational cost associated for the operation of that home. Therefore, I'm recommending you approve the resident room rates in the homes for the period June 2019 through May 2020 in accordance with the schedule that I attached. And of course, that includes the initial room rates for the Houston home, which I want to read into the record. Again, this is for June 2019 through May 2020. The private A&A rate per day is $246. Private non-A&A is $258. Alzheimer private A&A is $258. Alzheimer private non-A&A is $270, and Medicaid is $258. Those are the veteran rates. So non-veteran rates are $258 for a private room, $270 for Alzheimer's room, and $258 for Medicaid. And again, next to that, you can see the existing Tyler rates, and you can see the differences. It's $14 per day difference for each one of those, and the range is 5.5% to 6% higher. Happy to answer any questions.
Is there a cost of living adjustment included in the comparison between the Houston home, getting to those figures versus, say, a community like Tyler?
No, it's strictly based on the cost structure itself. It's just that home is going to be more expensive to operate. It's a little bit bigger. And I would add that when we set these rates, we did not include any amounts related to reimbursing construction cost to the surplus fund either. These are strictly based on operational costs associated with these homes. So if we were going to make the decision to repay the surplus fund, then these rates would be significantly higher than this.
And I think in a prior discussion I have in my notes, 7 to 8% cushion, if you will, is built into the budget operationally to
Yeah.
cover any potential.
So the way that I look at this is sort of how you might look at a revenue bond transaction. So if you're issuing revenue bonds, depending on the credit quality of the bond, there's going to be different coverage ratios that would be required, debt service coverage ratios required in order to get credit ratings from rating agencies. So overall, the way that we've approached this program is we try to structure initially we structured the rate so that we were carrying about a 110 to a 1.15x debt service coverage ratio. As time has gone on, we shrunk that down to 1.1. And with adding this one into the mix, since we have the history of the other homes and we know how stable they are, I've only structured these rates so that on this home, on a standalone basis, these rates generate about a 1.07 to 1.08, so slightly below 110. The overall rate on the homes is still about a 110, which, given the stability of the homes that's been demonstrated over the years, is an adequate cushion.
Okay.
All right,
Any other questions?
no questions. I'll make a motion to approve.
Second, motion is made, seconded, and carries unanimously to approve the staff recommendation. Next item on the agenda is number 7.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, this is a non-voting item. It's a quarterly investment report for the period ended December 31st. Just to briefly give you some economic conditions, this is for the fourth quarter of 2018. U.S. GDP increased at an annual rate of 2.2%. That was after increasing 3.4% in the third quarter. The unemployment rate ended the quarter at 3.9%, slightly up from 3.7% at the end of the third quarter. And after assessing current economic conditions and the outlook for inflation in the labor market, the Fed raised its target Fed funds rate range from 2% to 2.25% to the new range of 2.25% to 2.5%. So they raised it a quarter basis point. That was at their December meeting. They also sustained their balance sheet normalization program. That's a program they began in October of 2017. And basically it consists of the reinvestment of principal payments from its holdings in agency mortgage-backed securities and the rolling over at auction of maturing Treasury securities. At the December meeting, they voted to leave their target reinvestment thresholds in place, and they were unchanged at $30 billion on the agency-backed and $20 billion respectively on the Treasuries. If you'll turn to the third page, you'll see the performance metrics listed there. I'm not going to go through all those, but I'll just say that the return for the quarter was 1.3% versus 1.07% on the benchmark. The one-year total return was 1.83% versus 1.68 on the benchmark, and the yield to maturity end of the period was 2.98 versus 2.47 on the benchmark, and the duration of the portfolio was about 5.5 years. And if you look down at the bottom chart there, you'll see the highlighted line, the very last line highlighted there in yellow. So that's our average annual total return since inception. So that was in 1999. That should be through 2018. So our return was 3.32% versus 2.36 on the benchmark. So about 100 basis points. And again, this is not a typical total return portfolio because it's managed and designed to fund loan purchases and pay debt service first and investment return second. So to beat a benchmark by 100 basis points with those kind of restrictions, I think is pretty good. Again, non-voting, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board?
Questions?
Great returns.
Thank you. Thank you
This
very
being a non-action item, we can jump to item number 8. Thank you, Rusty.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Charlotte Mumford. There are no appeals before the board today.
This being a non-voting item, next item on the agenda is number 9.
There were 7 tracts ordered for sale during the forfeited land sale online bidding period of March the 4th, 2019 through April 23rd, 2019. We received a total of 116 bids, resulting in 6 high bids. Staff is requesting the board award all high bids that meet qualifications for the land loan program. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions from the board?
No questions? I'll move.
Motion is made, seconded, and carries unanimously to approve item number 9. Next item on the agenda is number 10.
Staff is requesting that the board take forfeiture action on the resolution before you, except accounts where sufficient funds are received to avoid that action. 11 accounts are being presented to the board for forfeiture action today. I will be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions?
No questions?
So moved. I'll need a second of the motion.
Oh, second?
Motion is made, seconded, and carries unanimously to approve the item. Next item on the agenda is number 11.
Staff is requesting the board take forfeiture action on the resolution before you. The resolution lists accounts to be ordered for sale action today. The 6 accounts will become the tracts for the next forfeited land sale. We're requesting the board's authority to pull any account that fully reinstates prior to the sale date. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
No questions?
Motion is made.
Second?
Motion is made, seconded, and carries unanimously to approve the item. Next on the agenda is number 12.
Staff is requesting the board set the next quarterly electronic forfeited land sale bidding period to begin June the 3rd, 2019, with the bidding deadline of July the 23rd at 5 p.m.
I'll move.
Second. Motion is made, seconded, and carries unanimously to approve the item. Next item on the agenda is number 13.
Staff is recommending a reduction in the minimum bid amount for the forfeited tracts listed in the memo that you've received to the amount of the recent appraisal value of each tract, as well as offering the tracts with no down payment to spur resales of these 10 tracts. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Is that the usual policy, no down payment?
No.
Okay. Why now?
Because those tracts have been in inventory for a long period of time, and with a new value, we're just hoping to be able to move those properties.
Okay, makes sense.
Some in excess of a decade?
Yeah.
Wow.
So we've had a new appraisal done on them, and it's reduced the price, so we just want to try to get those to become performing assets.
Sounds good. I'll move.
It's all about performance. I'll second. Motion is made, seconded, and carries unanimously to approve the item. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is number 14.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members. For the record, John Berkeley, Deputy Director of Texas State Veterans Homes. The purpose for agenda item number 14 is to update the board on actions taken towards developing a new Texas State Veterans Home in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. Our primary contacts have been with Tarrant County and Dallas County officials, including the County Veteran Service Officer, county judges, supervisors, and others. Well, all have expressed an interest in having a veterans home in their area. The sticking point is donating the land to the Veterans Land Board. We have identified an ideal parcel of property in Tarrant County near the VA clinic. However, the county must receive fair market value for the property. The VA will not allow a long-term lease as offered by the county. We continue to work with the county officials on obtaining the property. They're looking to see if they can do something similar to what we've done in Houston to develop the Richard A. Anderson home. We will also consider other potential properties if appropriate for construction. We must have title to the selected property by April 20th, or April of 2020. Construction Services has engaged Paul Donaldson Group to develop schematics and the initial design for the grant application to the Department of Veterans Affairs. And that grant application was submitted on April 9th. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any legitimate backup plans, like say in Dallas County or other adjacent counties?
Well, in working with the broker that we have, there is the one property near that former Montgomery Ward. It's on South Riverside and Berry Street. He just sent the schematics to us this week. It is an undeveloped property adjacent to that Montgomery Ward building. It looks like a somewhat economically depressed area, and there is very little development other than housing. There's substantial housing around it. So from a standpoint of having staff, that would be great, but I don't know if that would be as attractive as we want. It looks like a flat parcel property, so that's a possibility. We've not heard anything from our contacts from Dallas County.
And then VA never gave or outlined kind of the difference between the deal on the VA outreach clinic on similar county land, which is a long-term lease, and their
Right.
refusal to allow us to engage in a long-term lease.
Again, I think that's a different silo. The VA had actually approached Tarrant County to build the VA clinic, and the VA is actually renting that space from them. Here, they were adamant when the county offered us a 100-year lease for $1. They said, absolutely not, you have to have title to the property.
Okay, we'll keep plugging away. Board stands ready to be of assistance in reaching out to other counties to the extent possible, because if I recall from the original scope of the of this survey was to look at the Metroplex writ large, so so we shouldn't feel confined just to Tarrant County, even though they were initially the first.
And I have shared that with the broker, and when we submitted our application, we actually included approximately about 10 to 12 counties around the Metroplex. So we have lots of possibilities. As if we're actually supposed to hear something later this week, hopefully tomorrow, from Tarrant County, as they're willing to go forward on that parcel property. And I think, yeah, we have to just go forward and keep looking. Okay, thank you. Okay. Next item, item number 15. Again, this is a non-action item. This is for the purpose of this is to update the board on the licensing process and the operations of the Richard A. Anderson Texas State Veterans Home in Houston. Texas Veteran Home staff have submitted licensing applications to the Texas Department of Health and Human Services, Novitas for Medicare certification, Texas Medicaid and Healthcare Partnership for Medicaid certification. Those applications are pending upon submission of the local fire marshal report for the facility. Once we have the facility completed and the fire marshal report in hand, we'll submit to HHSC, and HHSC will conduct their life safety code. After that successful completion of that survey, we will be allowed to admit 3 residents. Then HHSC will come back and do their second portion of their survey, which is the health inspection, after which we can admit up to 20 residents. Once we achieve the 20 resident limit, we will then request from the VA the recognition survey for our home. That is a pass-fail survey, and all components must be in place in order to successfully achieve recognition. Once we have done that, though, we anticipate the home will reach full occupancy within 6 months. Touchstone Communities is the contracted operator for the facility and are in the process of hiring key staff. To date, they've hired Stephen Boyer, the administrator, Brenda Lester, the director of nursing. The Texas Veteran Home Division has hired Eric Tillman as our on-site representative for the facility. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
No
Any
questions?
from the board?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. As was mentioned, that's a non-action item. Before we adjourn, I want to thank Mr. Cobos for his service to the state of Texas. His term has expired. I believe his replacement has been confirmed by the Senate, though on Twitter, sometimes you have to double check. And we'll see when his term will begin, I guess potentially in the next meeting. But I want to thank Andrew for his incredible service to our country as a military veteran as well. We hope you won't be a stranger. I'm going to ask for staff to give a final salute to you, and we hope that you'll continue to serve the great state of Texas in another capacity.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and big thanks to all of you. Okay, it's been an honor and has brought great joy and happiness to serve alongside you and to fulfill this incredible mission that we have for Texas veterans. And this is such a great state. It's such a unique state in that there is this organization that serves the veterans in the way that it does. This is one of the reasons, and our folks over at the Texas Veterans Commission, you know, they got the Hazelwood program over there. This is what brought me back to Texas, and this is ultimately what keeps me and a lot of other veterans in Texas, is these great organizations. So thank you all for the incredible job that you do. You know, good luck to the board, and thanks to all of you. Go get them.
There being no further business, we are hereby adjourned.